Right, so we're here with Stacie today as part of the preamble to the Makers and Breakers podcast, which will be launching shortly. For everyone's benefit, Stacie Pascale, Vice President of Product Management at Aqua Comms, is the full title.
Yes.
And you've also been, in terms of your work history, you've been Director of Product at Zayo Group, responsible for LATAM, EMEA, APAC, so everywhere, and and the Subsea portfolio as well. And also the ultra-low latency business line. So lots of product experience there and globally. You know, we could have, I probably should have just said globally there. So yeah, I'm kind of interested today to learn more from a product perspective about your take on the industry, you know, where product is going, where it's been, what the challenges have been. So maybe we could just start there. You know, what are your initial thoughts on products in the industry, the sort of challenges that it has currently, and where it's headed?
Mm-hmm. Well, right now in my current role, I'm doing all Subsea. So Aqua Comms, all Subsea stuff and really lower stack type services, wavelengths, fiber, spectrum. So it's a really limited portfolio of products. Some carriers like Zayo that I worked at formerly, they have a much larger portfolio of products, but really telco companies are all offering kind of the same stuff. There's only so many protocols out there and so many different technologies that you could buy or want to buy for that matter. I feel like over the years you've seen, you see Console Connect, you see a lot of businesses try and do some innovation on the product side of things around automating things, making them easier to use. That stuff's excellent. There's a lot of work to be done there. Stuff still coming down the pipeline, but for the most part, the product suites themselves remain the same. And at Aqua Comms, actually, well, we'll see if our marketing team kicks me for saying this one. They didn't have product until I joined the team. This just almost a year ago from January. They didn't have product on the team because the product portfolio was so simple. They frankly didn't need it. They were just managing a handful of submarine cable systems. There's not really much you have to do there other than say, here's your 100 gig wavelength, pick it up here and here, and you can take it, do whatever you want with it. But businesses looking to expand, enter new markets, and so you start to enter this question of, well, from a product perspective, it is more than technology. What markets do we want to be in? How do we want our customers to feel when they're buying from us in those markets? How do we compete in the industry in ways other than just having capacity available with XYZ protocol handoffs? Mm-hmm. So these are the questions that I think a lot of businesses are starting to ask themselves more seriously. Some of the smaller ones like Aqua Comms that are starting to expand and grow. Other businesses like Zayo have been asking themselves these questions for a long time. But it starts to get into innovation is more than just the technology. It's the way that you think about the marketplace. It's the way that you think about the customers and what they want and what the buying experience is like. And how you're interacting with the world and creating it a better place through all those types of things that you're doing.
So yeah, and I guess in that sense, you're making them more solutions, right? You're not just selling that 100 gig or whatever. It's becoming a more packaged, polished solution, would you say? Yeah.
It's thinking about product as it's not just the wavelength. It's the how do you come to us to buy? What's it like when you buy it from us? There's your Console Connects and the automation layer. Okay, and then what services are you buying? And then what is it like to have that service live? What's the knock experience like? When you go to disconnect, how's that? Do you get options to change, to move, to complement what you already have with us? It's the entire life cycle of the service of buying from a company. And so I think product teams more and more are focusing on that holistically as their product innovation set, less so than just, do we want to sell Ethernet with our waves? Less so than those more simplistic questions.
Mm-hmm. So what does that look like at Aqua Comms now? Because you're kind of going through a bit of a transition, aren't you, from that sort of cable system builder, I guess, to the more of the investment in cable systems now, right? So what's the kind of vision for that now that you're kind of embarking on as that new product function, I guess?
Yeah. Well, now I'm going to double back on what I just said about product not being as much about the technology. It still very much is, of course, and it always will be in digital infrastructure. At Aqua Comms specifically, when we're looking at the submarine market, we're trying to fill the need of customers that are growing bandwidth, but they're looking at the subsea market and saying, okay, well, here's a challenging area because I've got these super robust fiber networks in transatlantic, for instance, in the US and Europe. Super robust fiber networks. I control them. I can put tons of capacity through on them. But this piece in the middle, this subsea piece, is incredibly expensive. There's very limited fiber count. How am I going to, do what my business needs to do with a reasonable amount of spend? customers are growing the amount of bandwidth that they need between international markets. And the product solution set for that up until recently has been wavelengths, right? Wavelengths or dark fiber or maybe fractional dark fiber, but it's challenging to get into those spectrum type conversations unless you're in the initial conversations of maybe a subsea build out. Spectrum is bought and sold on subsea cables all the time, but not necessarily truly commercialized. And then when you flip that to the technology side, you've got companies like Ciena. They're coming out with 3 nanometer. You used to have a 10 gig wave, then you got a 100 gig wave, 400, 800, 1.6 terabit is not far off in the future. So our strategy is to look at what's happening with the Cienas, the equipment hardware providers of the world, and see how that lends to the bandwidth growth that customers need. They don't want to buy fixed waves. They want to buy a piece of a fiber pair in the submarine market, and they want to be able to grow their bandwidth as they need it and manage it very similarly to their fiber assets. So we're trying to solve for how can we do that, and how can we do it in a way that still protects our submarine assets, because anyone knows that spectrum is, a little bit of a dangerous game when you're playing it on your fiber pairs. So that's the kinds of questions we're looking at right now in the submarine arena. As we're transitioning into buying fiber pairs and less so much on building them.
So are they just buying more capacity and then wanting to kind of expand into it? How are they managing that then today?
Now they're just buying, customer needs 800 gig. I'll take 2 400 gigs, or I'll take 100 gigs. But then when new technology comes out this summer, there's going to be new waves cards out there. That customer is going to be fixed into a term for that 100 gig wave, those 400 gig waves. But now maybe they could double that capacity, but they're in term. So how can we give them the flexibility that they need to say, you don't have to buy another 800 gigs. You can just put this new card on and double your capacity that way. So it's just that difference between the management of the system and being able to say, I'm adding this new equipment because it's better and it gives me a higher bandwidth and I'm doing it in term, versus the traditional capacity procurement in submarine, which is I need another 100 gig, another 100 gig, another 100 gig, and your MRCs are just stacking up.
And are you guys sort of venturing into more automation as part of that? Is that on your sort of roadmap? What kind of things are you looking at there, if at all?
The answer to are you looking at automation is always yes.
Yes.
But what I will say, and I think this is true for a lot of digital infrastructure companies, the question we ask ourselves is, what does it look like for us to automate in a way that our customers actually want? When I was at my former role, I was on the procurement side of the business, and we bought subsea capacity and international links all the time. And some of that was through emailing XYZ salesperson, hey, I need another 100 gig, or hopping in a portal. Okay, there is nothing worse than a bad portal when you're trying to buy something. And if you've got something really good going on with a salesperson and you just kind of say, hey, I need another 100 gig. This is how it was for me when I was buying from Aqua Comms. I need another 100 gig, super easy. Maggie, great, got it. We'll pull it up tomorrow. So easy. I don't want to deal with a portal and another login and another admin thing that I have to hand off. So it's all, what do your customers actually want from an automation perspective externally? And then internally, automation is a whole nother question. And I think it is the responsibility of product within organizations to optimize the business, in addition to optimizing the way that the business is perceived in the external market. But internally, how are we automating things so that, okay, now we've got this order come in, everything's automated and set up so it goes really smoothly, so the customer has a really fast experience. I don't really know why it was really fast, but it's because we've done all this internal automation. So that's more the question that we concern ourselves with at Aqua Comms right now. We don't really think there's a need within the market for us to automate externally, but internally, getting our systems moving really quickly, great storage of data so that that process feels really seamless is more what we're...
That's really interesting, because it is part of that customer experience, I guess, and that's the bit with product that I think, not just at Aqua Comms, but in a lot of businesses, I think over digital infrastructure has been missing, or people are aware is missing and they're just getting to it. But it's that question of, is it ops related or is it product? But it's all, essentially everyone's needs to be somewhat product led, because that's going to be, and as a marketer, that's going to help with the marketing side of things and the product marketing side of things. So it's interesting to hear you say that, because everyone instantly goes, we need to do automation, we need a portal. You know, so self-buy, you know, let's be more like SaaS, and let's do self-provisioning and all of that kind of thing. And everyone's just racing to achieve that, I guess, and then they find themselves all competing against that. But yeah, to recognize, stop and go, actually, is that really going to benefit someone for Subsea? Or can we just make the experience better through some of that technology that we can use? Yeah, it's really interesting to hear that.
Yeah.
Are there any other kind of newfangled things, you know, AI and whatever, coming in that you guys are looking at? I wouldn't expect so, but I'm kind of interested to know if any of that is touching on the subsea cable system world.
Yeah.
Other than just the great pictures that you're producing on Midjourney. Which are great, by the way.
Question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Midjourney is amazing.
So I think Subsea on Midjourney is a good topic to get really creative with. So yeah.
I mean, there's tons of ways you can integrate AI into just anyone's workflow. So I think it's great for that kind of application. I think that for us, the biggest question around AI is just what does it mean for data and the movement of data and its trends. So that's something that I would say I'm still actively chasing down and trying to find the right answer to. It might be one of those things that we don't really know until it hits us, what the impacts of it will be from a bandwidth consumption perspective. But that's mostly what we're interested in. We are a smaller business, very specialized, very niche in submarine. We simply don't have the data volume to be doing any kind of machine learning in any kind of way that would be sensible for our business internally. So for us, it's just, okay, is there any external softwares that have already been developed or products that have already been developed that we can integrate into our daily workflow? And then the second question is completely separate. What does it mean for data movement around the globe?
Yeah, I guess that impact that it's having on the whole infrastructure industry, and then how, you know, potentially we're using it a lot in marketing now, so in terms of just campaign management and the vast data we get through stuff like that. Yeah. But even just being able to brief designers, you know, by using Midjourney and things like that, I use that all the time instead of sitting on stock photography going, I mean, this picture, this is what I want.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
No, but yeah, I wouldn't have expected it, but I was kind of interested to see if anything, the AI question, like you say. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that impacts the industry in general. What actually attracted you, speaking of digital infra, what attracted you to the industry initially? How did you get into it? Is there kind of a story there? Or?
Wow, not much of a story. I was doing door-to-door paper sales. You walk up to a door and knock on a business door and say, do you need to buy paper? And they would be like, excellent. No, I just went to Staples. Why would I buy? Would you
like some submarine cable system instead, please?
And it was this job was all commission based, so I never made $1. So I was like, man, I got to find a new job. I was really bad at sales. That's why I'm not in sales. Never will be. Well, cut that part.
Okay.
We'll see.
But I'm gonna leave that in now.
I just had a friend that worked in telecom, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just try that for a little bit. And then I was never planning to stay because just like every other person from my generation, I thought telecom's so boring. Couldn't be more boring of a career track. But then I started.
And then you realized you were a geek.
And I was like, well, maybe this is the job for me. But no, then I started working on the international side of the business, and it was kind of like, this is pretty cool. You get a little regulatory, a little technology, a little finance. The product is great. I didn't even know that I wanted to go into product when I was in university. So now I just love it. I mean, you go to the shows, you meet people, like we were just talking about before, you see them at every show, the same folks all over and over again. So you kind of get this cool community of people that all work in the same industry, and it's a great place to be.
Excellent, great. Yeah. I love that, paper sales. From paper sales to telco, there's got to be some kind of headline in there. There's definitely a bit of a story. Okay, and I mean, we were talking about community before, right? And this is a topic that I'm kind of interested in myself in the industry at the moment. And that product community, right? And you're a bit of a chat. I've seen that you're kind of doing stuff with PTC Beyond, sort of championing people coming in to the industry, making sure there's more product leaders coming through as well. What are the kind of things that you're getting involved in there, and what are the things that you see needing to change there or develop, or some of the challenges that are coming out of that? Like, what is it? What's your mission on that front? I guess is the question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like I just said, when you go to the conferences, you see all the same folks for the most part at any conference you head to, any of the capacity conferences or anything of the like. And when I go to these, I just often would look around and not really see many folks in my demographic. So oftentimes my colleagues and these people that I have wonderful relationships with and love working with, they're all, twice my age, 3 times my age.
Definitely keep
it in. And I'm just looking at these amazing conferences where there's so much to learn, so many people to meet. The job is so fulfilling. There's something in telecom for everybody. No matter what your discipline is, you can find a piece of work that's really fulfilling. And I just wondered why more people weren't interested in it. And it became really apparent to me when I was getting my master's. And it was a graduate course that you took in the evening. So you'd work all day. Everyone was working full time and then taking this MBA course in the evening. And it was during the pandemic that I finished my MBA. And so all of my cohort were getting laid off, a lot of them, because that was just the way that things went in the pandemic. There was tons of layoffs. And I was going, come work in telecom. We are hiring. The telecom industry has it's a great place to work. It's got a lot of staying power. You make good money. There's tons to do. It's international, all these great things. And they were like, no, I don't want to work in telecom. And I'm sitting there going, you'd rather be unemployed.
That's a bad rep for telco.
I know. I'm like, that's not good. Gosh. That's not looking good for us. Yeah. And then around that same time is when all these reports started coming out about the industry talent crisis and just in general. If you look at the trajectory of the industry and how much we have to build and how much needs to be done and the amount of money going into it from governments, from private investment, the amount of bandwidth growth that we see, and just how many specialized people it takes to execute something like that. In the US alone, we've got all kinds of funding going on for different projects that we just simply don't have the people to execute. That's the number one hold on getting some of these projects done, is there's not the skilled workforce that you need. And then when you get the workforce in, the upskilling is nonstop. Yeah. Like we talked about earlier, innovation on the tech side, it's constantly changing in telecom. Yeah. I mean, there's constantly new stuff coming out. Markets are changing. People are changing the way they buy, the types of services that they need. You just have to constantly reskill, upskill, and have a super dynamic hiring process that allows for that. I think folks coming out of university aren't interested in working in telecom. And then when they get here, they quickly maybe fall out because things change so quickly and they just aren't really finding the right incentives to stay. When I joined telecom, I found conference a great way for me to want to stay because I met all these people. I got that community and I learned so much, and I got to travel and do all these amazing things. And so I said, why not bring one of the best parts of telecom to the younger generations? You shouldn't have to wait. You shouldn't have to work in an industry for 30 years to participate in these conferences. You just shouldn't. So that was what PTC Beyond was all about. We were like, bring your young people to the conferences. They're the ones that need it. You, sir, have been to this conference 20 years in a row. You just told me. Skip next year and send your new hire. Send your new PM. Send someone who needs the exposure and would actually learn a lot from this. So that's where that all started, and that's, I guess, kind of the idea behind it, is just trying to get the newer generation to the conferences. That's where you learn. That's where you see the breadth of the industry. Yeah.
Well, you just get engaged with it, right? Yeah. And it is that if it can be built into that educational sort of program that these companies now have in telco and see that constant upskilling and recognize it, then the conferences should be part of that. That's great. Excellent. So in terms of the kind of advice that you would give someone coming into telco, apart from seeing it as a better alternative to unemployment, I can't believe that. That's crazy. What kind of advice would you give them? Because it is, we were chatting about this before, but it is that kind of the digital infrastructure industry in terms of a tech industry. It's not as shiny and cool as something like SaaS, right? And it's still B2B. Sort of business, right? And the next generations are coming through, and that might not seem that sexy to them. But what would you say to those people then, who are actually interested and go, yeah, I am a bit nerdy, and this looks cool actually, and I do get to travel, in terms of making their mark and making some headway there? What would you advise them to do, or to start thinking about, or learning about even?
Yeah, I mean, easier said than done, but it's just stick with it. On my first 2, maybe even 3 years working in the industry, I had no idea what was going on. I worked in fiber for the first 2 years. I barely even knew how that worked. I was just an analyst working on numbers and, data, and I didn't know what the product suites were, and they confused me. And then every time someone tried to explain it to me, I'd be like, okay, that's confusing. And I'd try to Google it, and it would say something completely different from what they just said.
Well, that's because we don't have product marketing in the industry.
And so I'm serious, the first 3 years that I was in telecom, I had no idea what was going on. But I just kind of stayed in it because, I'd made some really good friends in the job I worked at, and I wanted to stay. And then eventually, and really it was because of the conferences, the world just opened up to me, and I was like, oh, that's kind of how it all fits together. But it takes a while for you to build up that initial knowledge base to where you can really run with things. I think that first period where people have to build that knowledge base and figure out how everything works and learn it scares a lot of folks away. I'd say probably 2 years at least, where even if you're in a really good training program at your company, 2 years to really figure out what's going on and understand the way that the different products work together. Find a role where you can learn that stuff and be exposed to a bunch of things, and then just try and learn and stick with it. Try to resist the urge to just say, this is a little confusing. I'm just going to go work for a SaaS company.
Yeah, I mean, I used to train salespeople in how to sell network, and you could tell within the first 2 weeks if they were going to stick it out or not. Just like rabbits in the headlights, talking about MPLS and BGP and all these acronyms in the industry as well.
Yeah.
So no, I totally agree. And I think it's 2 years, and you forget. I mean, I forget after being in that space, and I've come out of it to do a marketing agency, but you forget how much knowledge you do just absorb, I think, and that again by peers in the industry, conferences. For me personally, it was having that one tech person who could explain things in a way that I could understand. Trying to find those people, I think, is really critical as well, because it is confusing. Do you think people have to be very technical to go into product? Do they? Because there is that kind of like they start in engineering maybe, but I've had people go, "Oh, you'd be great in product," but I'm a marketing person, so I'm like, I don't know that I'm technical to this much, but. But what are your thoughts on that? Do they need to be?
I don't think you have to be technical to be in product, because it is about the technology. You will learn it. Whatever product you're overseeing, if you are worried, I don't want to go into this because I don't know anything about wavelengths, I don't know anything about MPLS, my background's in fiber, you will learn it. It will just take some time, and you can be effective without knowing the technology. Product is all about cross-functional partnership. You can be successful in product if you just have a really good relationship with your engineer and a really good relationship with your sales and marketing team, and you just cross-functionally manage those two relationships very well. They can carry you 90% of the way. You're just having to manage those two things between them, right?
The glue between.
Yeah, and you'll pick it up along the way while you're doing that. So it's all about, I mean, the number one skill you have to go in with is being able to manage cross-functionally, show people the value and why you need them to help you with things. And then they will, and then you just kind of get things moving, and eventually the tech will come naturally.
Okay, great advice. What do you think holds the industry back then in terms of advancing in product, getting this next generation through? What do you think are the things holding it back that we need to look at?
I think it's going to be kind of a basic answer, but I think it's just that there is an active movement against this kind of thing still occurring, but just the crosstalk of generations within businesses, it needs to go up. A lot of times you've got the younger folks coming in and they're kind of in the individual contributor roles, first line management roles, and then you've got your executive team up here, and maybe every now and then they'll let you pitch a deck or they'll hear you out on some idea. And this is maybe in a larger business, not necessarily the one I'm in now. But what it needs to be is, no, every single time there's a strategy session or a decision to be made, or you've got to come up with some new idea, there's so much value in having the older generation, the experienced generation in the same room as the brand new, fresh blood. You're only 1 year through your 2 year figuring out what a product is, period. And you're just in there kind of asking the dumb questions, and you're in a psychologically safe environment where you can say something a little bit weird that doesn't really make any sense, but maybe it gives someone an idea, and maybe one of the experiences is going to be, maybe we should do that. There's just not enough crossing between the generations going on in our industry, and I think that we are all suffering because of it, because those fresh ideas aren't making their way to the people that have the power to execute decisions.
It's a really good way of looking at it, because it's easy to go, the people who've been in the industry forever, they need to now retire and move on and let the next generation come in. But actually, it's
no,
the
you
two,
need both.
Like you say, yeah,
you
it's
need both.
like having that wealth of experience, where they probably will naturally be those people going, well, we tried that and it didn't work, and my experience tells me that this isn't going to work over here, but we can take that idea and we can put it into this setting.
Yeah.
And actually, that's a really good idea. It just needs a different context and framework. But you also want people who are less cynical about things now after 20 years of experience or whatever, coming in with all those great fresh ideas, like you say, but will have some naivety around that of what's going to work and what's not, and because they lack that experience, needing that. So yeah, it's finding the sort of happy middle ground between the two is ideal, but it's a fresh look on it, really, because I think we do get into the us and them kind of battle sometimes.
I mean, if you put the two together, it's like magic. I mean, even like you said, some of the more cynical, more experienced folks, no, I've tried that before, that never worked, that's never worked. Yeah. How long ago did you try it?
Yeah, might not be the right time.
Yeah, we're in a different, every 5 years, it's like a whole different world in telecom. Maybe try it again. Maybe you just need someone to bring up an idea again.
Well, it's all about timing as well, isn't it? So, no, absolutely. Right, well, I think we're kind of wrapping up now. One last thing I would like to pick your brains on a bit is what you see as being the sort of vision for the industry, what the sort of key trends might be, or a force for change, something in that direction. What do you sort of see on the horizon for the industry?
I would say that, and this is kind of more like a maybe 20, 30-year outlook, I just see the industry needing to find ways to work together more. And this is not going to be the product technology answer that you want. This is more like a lofty,
that's okay,
fruity answer. But I think that, you talk consolidation, you talk competitors. Lately, I feel like it's all complementers, partnerships. How are we working together? The industry is huge. Just look at the transatlantic alone, all the different carriers with assets in that ecosystem, with systems competing against one another, driving prices down. I just think we're going to have to find a way to bring the world together from an infrastructure perspective. When I worked at a previous role, we had operations in 30 countries that we were selling circuits into, a different regulation for each. I mean, it's a nightmare. These countries need capacity. People need to get bandwidth around the world. So I think that over the next 10, 20 years, it's going to be all around making that easier, bringing the industry together, true partnership, and not seeing everybody as cutthroat. Oh, you priced your Subsea link at this, let me price it $5 less.
Race to the bottom.
Yeah, exactly.
Great, excellent. Well, listen, thanks, Stacie. It's been great having you on. I know you've been jet lagged as well, so thank you very much for braving through that to come on this preamble to the Makers and Breakers podcast. Thank you.
Great.